Welcome to the ReGen Brands Podcast, the place for brands, retailers, investors, and other food system stakeholders to learn about the consumer brands supporting regenerative agriculture and how they're changing the world. I'm your host, AC. Thanks for tuning in. Now let's get into today's conversation. On this episode of the ReGen Brands Podcast, we're talking with Carrie Richards, the fourth generation rancher behind Richards Regenerative. Carrie takes us through her incredible journey from scrappy beef sales out of a friend's freezer to supplying over 40 school districts and major retailers like Sprouts. We deep dive into the challenges and contradictions of building a regenerative beef business, from dealing with misleading country of origin labeling and predatory brand partnerships to navigating the real math behind carcass utilization, processing costs, and wholesale margins. Carrie also shares her hopes in the future use of nutrient density data, her fears about the future of the cattle market, and the launch of Harvest Path, a software platform purpose-built to help small and mid-sized ranchers thrive. Let's dive in. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the ReGen Brands Podcast. Very excited today to have my friend Carrie Richards from Richards Regenerative joining us. So welcome, Carrie.
Thanks so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. You also have an epic hat on, so I got to get my hands on one of those hats. For those that are just listening to audio, we got a great Richards Regenerative camo trucker hat, it looks like. But Carrie, for those that might not be familiar with the brand, can you give just a brief overview of what y'all produce and where people can find your products today?
Yeah, we produce grass-finished, pasture-finished regenerative beef in California. The main places you can buy our stuff is all the Sprouts markets on the West Coast. We have
Nice.
our CPG products in there, as well as online through Delivered Cold, which is our 3PL that does all of our
Nice.
delivery for us, as well as on Amazon. So those are kind of the three avenues you can get our products. And it's mainly ground beef, our ancestral blend with heart and liver ground beef,
Yeah.
and various steaks.
Love it. Love it.
Mhm.
Well, I think this is clearly a family operation, and there's probably a fun origin story based on what I saw on the website that spans all the way back to 2011 and maybe even earlier than that. But give people a feel for, when did the ranching thing come about for y'all? When did the regenerative thing come about? And when did the brand kind of come about? What's the origin story behind the business as it exists today?
Yeah, so my great-grandfather bought our family ranch in Oregon House, California. No one knows where that is. It's fine. It's it's
Add me to
north.
that list of people that have no idea where that is.
There's like one person that's like, I know where Oregon House is. It's an hour and 20 minutes northeast of Sacramento in California.
Okay.
So it's 6,500 acres,
Nice.
and it was purchased in 1941. So
Wow.
my great-grandfather ran it, my grandfather ran it, my father ran it, and now I'm running it. And
Wow.
maybe my kiddos or my niece and nephew, we don't really know yet. But so
Yeah.
that's kind of the production line of who's been running the property. So my father, I spent a lot of time up here as a child. I actually grew up in Sacramento, but like I said, it's only about an hour outside of Sac.
Yep.
And so I have three siblings, two brothers and a sister. And in 2011-ish, we started talking to Dad about, what's next? What are we going to do? Like, what's the next avenue for the ranch?
Hmm.
And that was also kind of the omnivore's dilemma era. And like
Yeah.
things were getting a little bit like exciting around, where does your meat come from? Where does your, like, what are you eating? Is it pasture raised? Like all of that was kind of bubbling up to the top at the same time.
Hmm.
People were coming to my dad at that time and asking for whole animal and asking us to finish
Wow.
animals for him. And he kind of didn't really understand. He was like, okay, whatever, we'll finish some animals for the local guys. But we're like, Dad, like, this is the thing, grass-fed beef, like pasture raised, eating healthier, knowing where your food comes
Hmm.
from. And he was kind of like, whatever. Um, and, and so it kind of started really scrappy, where my siblings and I were selling whole beeves in the Bay Area where we were all living at the time to family
Yeah.
and friends. I sold a half beef to my book club, like out of my friend's freezer in their garage with my little clipboard. I mean, it was real scrappy in the beginning.
Yeah.
So, I think 2012, we sold like 16 head and we were like, oh my God, we
Wow.
did it.
Yeah.
At that time, we joined American Grass Fed Association because we wanted to have some sort of like outline of how we raise our animals, what to do, what
Yeah.
not to do. And then shortly after that, we decided we were going to try this thing out and maybe try and sell to some restaurants and butcher shops. And we hired a part-time salesperson.
Mm.
That was 2013. And then
Yeah.
the business kind of exploded after that because, like I said, during that time, the "Where's your food come from?" movement was happening.
Yeah.
That kind of is where we started tracking all of our animals online using our Salesforce system that we now have turned into a product, which I can talk
Yeah.
about later. But yeah, we needed a way to organize the ranch, the operation, the animals, the production from the Bay Area because we weren't living up here yet.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of where we decided, all right, this is a go, and we started Richards grass-fed beef. We weren't Richards Regenerative at the time because we didn't
Mm.
know what regenerative was at the time, mainly. And
Yeah.
so we moved to about a load a month, in 2015, and I raised my hand as the person that would come up to the ranch and kinda help pivot this property to 100% grass-fed, grazed, grass-finished operation,
Yeah.
tracking all the animals, tracking the audits for American Grass-Fed, and my husband and I and our 2 kiddos moved up in 2016.
And before
So
before you
that's
did that, Carrie,
Mhm,
how was the ranch like being run more specifically,
great question.
previous to that?
We were very traditional. We were cow-calf.
Yeah.
We were buying animals from our cousin up in Modoc County, who we still buy animals from today.
Yeah.
And we had about it's funny because we were arguing about how many animals we had. And so that's what started the software company because we're like, "We need to know how many animals we have."
Yeah.
So at the time, we had about 600, mama cows.
Mm. Okay.
And so we were very traditional, like I said. We would sell all of them to the auction,
Mhm.
keep some replacement heifers for our, herd, and then we'd finish this small handful of animals for local families and friends.
Got it.
And so that was where we've been in that tradition for years. My great-grandfather had a purebred Hereford herd, and that was
Mm.
his thing. My dad did a purebred Murray Grey herd for a while, and that was his thing. My grandfather was very into horses, so we used to have a ton of horses and breeding horses and all the things. But we never were a finishing operation, and we never had a meat company. So
Yeah.
the meat company came from our generation.
Mhm.
But yeah,
It's interesting. I feel like we've seen this theme with folks on the beef side is like you almost have to start a meat company to become a finishing operation versus like vice versa, which I feel like you would think would be the opposite. But
there's a
it
lot of
seems like
things I think I would have done differently.
yeah. I mean, I think anyone that starts a business or has any sort of entrepreneurial venture, we would all say that, myself included,
Mhm,
in a big way.
mhm.
Um, So I cut you off in the middle of your story. You put your
Totally
hand
fine.
up to kind of go help with the transition specifically of the land management, but that obviously is heavily tied to the meat business. Take us back to those early days and what that looked like and maybe some of the biggest challenges there.
Yeah, when we moved up in 2016, I was still a commercial, wedding and portrait photographer, and I was, like, doing that on the side. I was living at the ranch. Our kids were 2 and 4. I mean, it was bananas. So,
Sounds like
um
it.
yeah, and I was like, "I ran my own business for 10 years. I've got this." And then
Yeah.
I moved to the ranch, and I was like, "I don't even know who we buy our hay from." Like, I don't even know, like, how the irrigation works, like, it was
Yeah.
one of those moments where you're like you have this, like, false confidence because
Mm,
you've ran a business before, and then you move up
right.
here and you're like, "Oh, I have to worry about, like, commodity prices and like
Mm.
gas prices and like these bigger numbers and global issues that I never thought about before. And so
Yeah.
that was really eye-opening, water districts and getting on boards and, um, I always wondered by other ranchers and why my dad, like, ran for the board of supervisors. I was always like, "What? Why does
Yeah.
everyone that has large pieces of property have to get involved?" And, oh, because you
Yeah.
have to get involved because being an owner of a large piece of land in a community, you're kind of like an anchor to that community. And so you have to be involved with fire mitigation. You have to be involved with water rights. And so anyway, it was drinking out of a
Especially
fire
in
hose.
California.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah.
That's where rules are made in California. We breed rules. Um, I've decided. Um, that's what we export.
Yeah.
So we moved up here. It was great. And then at the time, the management that we had was not really feeling my excitement on, we're going to have chickens and we're going to move them every day. And then we're going to have pigs and we're going
Mm.
to have all the things and we're going to be Joel Salatin. And they were like,
Mhm.
what are you thinking? So that transition was tough, and
Yeah.
I really had to learn that, like, certain pieces of land can handle those kinds of things, and certain pieces of land can handle different kinds of things. So that was
Yeah.
my learning in, what we do now is we have a pastured pork program, and we have our grass-fed beef finishing program, and those are the 2 main programs we have. The
Yeah.
rotating chickens and, like, with the crazy heat we have here and just bringing
Mm.
in feed, like, there's all these things that I really wanted to do that over the years I'm, like, realizing, like, oh, like, there's a reason why not all ranches do all the things.
Right. Right.
So American Grass-Fed was actually a great ally for us because there's only a few of us in California that are American Grass-Fed, so I just kinda cold called everybody, and that's how
Mhm.
I met Tomcat Ranch,
Mm.
and a bunch of other producers that I'm still friends with today, and, they referred me to the Savory Institute, which is where I learned about regenerative and
Yeah.
holistic management.
Yeah. There's a great, NorCal crew of regen folks in general, but especially I
Mhm,
feel like on the beef side.
mhm.
So love that you were able to tap into that network.
Yeah.
Um, as you were making the land transition, how did the brand or the meat business go from, hey, we're selling 6 head a year to family and friends in wholes and halves to whatever it became in kind of the next iteration? Tell me about that.
I would like to say that it was really smooth and planned and organized, but it was
Yeah.
not.
Mhm.
It was scrappy. It was, "Hey, we got
Yeah.
somebody that wants to buy 300 pounds of brisket a month," and we're like, "Okay, what do we do with the rest of the animal?" So it was a
Yeah.
constant, um, grow and shrink and grow and shrink. So from about 2012 or 2013 to 2019, we grew from that 16 head a year to about 3 loads a month. And
Mm.
we were in all sorts of avenues, especially our trim products. We're mainly in like, we were selling into Country Archer and Shake Shack. We helped grow the Shake Shack program here out in the West Coast, with
Yeah.
our partner Cream Co., and they're our
Yep.
distributor now still. That was started in 2019. But a lot
Mhm.
of our big, trim products, bones and fat and grinds, were going to these bigger customers. We
Mhm.
were then selling all of our prime cuts online, and then we had butcher shops and grocery stores and restaurants that we were working with. So, our mix during that time is similar to what it is now, which is about 90% wholesale and 10%,
Wow.
direct to consumer. Um, that has since pivoted from that model. We had employees and um, we had cold storage facilities all over the place. We actually had to, after the pandemic, the boom of the pandemic became a
Right.
shrinking in like 21, 22.
Mhm.
I'm sure you've talked to other producers and how crazy that time was for all of us local folks. Because
Yeah.
2019, it was like, "Oh, business as usual." 2020, we sold out everything we had because they
Right.
couldn't bring in anything from other countries.
Mhm.
And then it all kind of, like, evened itself out a few years after that. So,
Mhm.
I was living up here, my brother was still in the Bay Area, and we basically condensed our team down to just our family and
Mm.
started selling 100% distributor through our partner and our partner now, which is Cream Co. Meats, and they are a distributor out of the Bay Area. Um,
Nice.
so that was a tough decision, like,
Yeah.
to we had employees and we loved everybody and we wanted to keep growing and growing and growing, but at some point like I said, we've grown and we've shrunk and we've grown and we've shrunk. But we're still here. We're still fighting.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
And
the
you're
transition that transition was that was a tough one for us.
Yeah, but your mix of sales channels is always gonna dictate that.
Mhm,
Having operated similar businesses in food and having all these
mhm.
conversations now, like, it at a certain point, it just becomes math that you can't really engineer your way out of.
Yeah.
And I do feel like I have a certain level of heightened interest and empathy for the grass-fed beef folks in the space, because to me, it's like 4 layers of complexity that are really hard to control or plan around.
Mhm,
You have the entire macro commodity, macroeconomic things that you already mentioned, right? So, like, that's layer one, which is almost completely out of your control and super unpredictable, especially in the times that we live in today. You have the actual, like, animal husbandry and the actual raising of the animal, which has all the biological variables that you really can't control.
mhm,
Um, you have the processing element, which we've talked about really ad nausea on this show, whole carcass utilization, and also processing access and processing costs and efficiencies. You have all those variables. And then after those 3 layers, you have the final beast, which is like the most competitive capitalistic end market to commercialize a product that's ever existed in the world. So it's like,
that's all.
woo!
That's all.
Just four layers of fun.
4 layers of fun. Yeah, and It it's hard for a lot of reasons, it's exciting for a lot of reasons, but, like, you can process an animal 100 different ways.
Yeah.
And so for months, you'll be like, "This is our cut sheet, this is our cut sheet," and then you'll lose a customer, a big one,
Mhm.
even like
Mhm.
a medium-sized one. You'll
Yeah.
have to pivot those, do we make more grind? Do we it's such a tricky industry for planning. And like you said, processing has doubled in price since 2020. Everything's more expensive.
Ugh.
And
Yeah.
it's just the thing that excites me the most is like your conversation you had with Audacious, who is
Mhm.
concentrating a lot on the nutrient density of our
Yeah.
products, like of grass fed and pasture raised, because that is kind of the deep data that can differentiate us from just a commodity product. So I was excited to hear that you talked to them, and I listened a little bit to it, and, we
Yeah.
love working with them, and that's been kind of a game changer for us.
Yeah. Love that. And I've been having conversations as of late. Like, we're in this really, I think, interesting time
Mhm,
in the regen ag movement. Like, there's some conflicting momentum, in my opinion.
mhm,
Like, we have this whole Maha thing that I think has really caused a level of heightened awareness, like, at large. But
mhm,
I think the agenda there is going to be very watered down to ever get to, like, the true transformative solutions that a lot of the people that we've talked to are pioneering. But I'm still hopeful in the, rising tide of whatever that thing is.
mhm.
We have people like Audacious and what Eric is doing and many others, where we're like continuing to back up all this stuff with real data and provide real
Right.
evidence. And it feels like, and this could be just me projecting, but it feels like many of the folks that have been in the fight for a number of years are kind of burnt out, and there's been some attrition and some of the challenges from kind of the macroeconomic context of right now, some of the pullback in funding, everything from philanthropy to kind of for-profit investment and even working capital. So it feels like we're in this really interesting kind of spot at the moment, this very real inflection point. And you know, I guess I don't have anything to wrap all that up in a pretty bow other than just to say it's very interesting to be in the middle of, and it's going to be very interesting to watch and see kind of where things are at in 2028, 2030, et
Yeah.
cetera.
I mean, something that we did right before the pandemic and during is the pandemic was terrible, but it had these tiny little bright spots.
Hmm.
I don't know if you remember, but they shut all the schools down, but then they decided immediately they were going to continue to feed everybody, which I
Hmm.
thought was amazing.
Yeah.
And so we were able to pivot pretty quickly. We had already been discussing trying to get our product into the schools, our trim products.
Yeah.
And so we were able to get into 2 districts in 2020, because they needed it. They needed the product. Cisco and all the big distributors were having issues getting stuff imported. And so with Cream Co., we built this really amazing program called Beef to Institution, and with
Hmm.
Tomcat Ranch and CAF. And it literally took 12 different entities,
Yeah.
half of them nonprofits, the rest of us all industry people, to create this really cool Beef to Institution program.
Yeah.
And so in 2020, we were in 2 school districts, and then last year we were in 41 school districts. So
Wow.
it's been a really
Wow.
cool, yeah, it's been a really cool program,
Yeah.
to get all of our trim basically allocated immediately
Hmm.
to this avenue that is it makes you feel good because you're feeding the kiddos, and
Right.
it's also, going to such a good cause. That's been a really bright spot from
Hmm.
the pandemic that, um, we've really tapped into that. We're now selling in some of the UC schools as well through our distributor, Cream Co. And it's been that part's been really exciting, but
Hmm.
I worry, like you said, with these unsure times, we are getting diluted by imports all
Yeah.
the time. And
Yeah.
I get it, and it's like you said, at some point, it just becomes math.
Yeah.
But there's so many domestic regenerative producers in California, across the state, and there's so many large buyers of
Hmm.
product, like the Applegates or the General Mills, that could buy our product because there's so little of it and blend it
Yeah.
into their cheaper product. But I that doesn't seem to be happening. And it that like you said about the burnout, it's like the motivation and the snowball was, starting to roll down the hill for regenerative. And now I feel like it's a little bit foggy of, where it's gonna go. But if I ask anyone that buys from us, they're like, "We buy from you because you are taking care of the land. We love the way you're raising your animals." And I get
Hmm.
a lot of ex-vegans that are
Ex-vegans. Yeah.
customers that are they're like, "If I'm gonna buy from anyone, I'm gonna buy from you." It's it's hard because we live in this space where we are the example of what people want,
Yeah.
but we're in a weird time where, people are really tight on cash and people are really nervous about the future of the world, but at the same time, everyone's health is terrible. So that's why the
Hmm.
audacious information, I'm like, we kinda need this information to help people make an educated decision at the store.
Yeah.
Um, so those are kind of the challenges we have at the moment is
Yeah.
how do we educate people, also raise the animals, also sell it, also distribute it, also work with our partners,
Hmm.
like most of us.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot I want to pull from what you just shared. So let me make a couple maybe observations, and then I'll get to a question eventually. One thing you said really quickly that I just want the audience to pick up on is part of that beef to institution is the UC, the University of California, um, which what is there 12 or 13 campuses in the
Yeah,
UC
so
system?
we sell into UC Davis hospitals as well as UC
Okay.
Davis schools, and then a couple of the other UCs as well as Berkeley and Stanford.
Yeah, but the UC system has to be procuring what, $1 billion plus in food at
Yeah, we
least,
are
you would think?
this big compared to their entire amount.
Yeah, but just it's a huge opportunity, I think, for the procuring of good food, especially in a
Mhm.
state like California where you have so much domestic or local production that, it really can serve as a backbone there. So I wanna put a pin in that, and I wanna use it to illustrate and maybe ask you a question, Carrie, about we've had a lot of folks, on the show where they are definitely not 90% wholesale, 10% D2C.
Mhm.
especially coming off of COVID, they really moved the business to maybe a 50-50 or some sort of heightened percentage D2C versus wholesale.
Yeah.
To me, my assumed perspective there, based on the little that you've shared and the little that I know about your business that I want you to elaborate on, is a few things drive that for y'all, right? You have really good institutional opportunities that you've kind of mentioned,
Yeah.
right? With some of the beef to institution and the farm to school programs. You have a affluent, urban market near you that is an outlet for you in the Bay Area, right? You have a very competent and good wholesaler in Creamco that can probably deliver throughput and margin that makes sense, where a lot of the ranchers and the brands we talk to, they don't have that in their geography.
Right.
Um, so am I right on that in general? And could you just elaborate maybe on that takeaway? Because I think it's just an important kind of business takeaway that maybe is a little contrarian to some of the people that we've talked to, but it works for you all. So I'd love to know
Yeah,
more
you're
about it.
correct. You're very correct in the anchor, which was the school system and the UCs. They got rid
Mhm.
of all of our trim and our less expensive cuts for us, which
Yeah.
is the bulk of the animal. So that was like a
Yeah.
real anchor for growing that wholesale customer. Uh,
Hmm.
Creamco's been a partner of ours for years, and so they knew our product, they knew our customers. That transition was very easy, and like you said,
Hmm.
in the Bay Area, there is a little bit more of affluence.
Yeah.
Another anchor account that we have right now is the Sprouts Market, so
Right.
a lot of our middle cuts are going there, and then, like I said, we had to condense everything down in 2022, and kind of start over because we got rid of our employee that was doing our D2C. And so we found a partner in the middle of the US, delivered cold, and they are doing everything for us. And so we're regrowing that D2C, and we want it to be more of our production, and it's growing every month. But yeah, we are a little bit of an anomaly. Like, I know you talked to Will and Jenny, and
Hmm.
um, they have a lot more online D2C business, and it's
Hmm.
wonderful. It's high calorie, especially in California, which is why we moved it to Texas because of math.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
math in California, it just didn't pencil.
Right.
So yeah, that's you're right. We had a lot of anchors that could move us in this direction of more wholesale.
Yeah. And that's, I think, I think part of the reason why we wanted to create this platform was we don't need anyone to put an Excel spreadsheet up on the screen, but in a lot of the conversations about regenerative, we don't talk enough about how it really comes down to, can you make the margin and the gross profit dollars to make this thing work? And we didn't see a lot of examples of that happening in the space that didn't include people operating some sort of a brand. Now, a brand can be majority wholesale versus direct consumer, like what you all are doing. It's still a brand, right? Or it can be the
Mhm.
opposite, or it can be some other sort of something. But ultimately, a brand, in my opinion, is, are people buying it from you specifically because they know about XYZ about you, the product, etc. Um,
Right.
and it's, at the end of the day, it's, can you make the margin and the gross profit dollars work in whatever context you're operating in? Um, you talked about the domestic versus the international piece. This has been coming up, I think, a lot. I think maybe the last handful, especially of grass fed beef, regenerative beef folks that we've had on. Um, it seems like a tough thing for us to figure out as a
Yeah.
group. We've talked about, I think, some of the reasons why the tension exists. We've talked about kind of why the cost of production is significantly lower, some of the market dynamics. So I don't know if I have the perfect prompt or question for you, Carrie, but I'd love to just hear you maybe elaborate on some of the things that you're thinking about there, your take on it, or things that you'd like to have the community think about.
Yeah.
What's top of mind for you on that topic?
Yeah, I mean, we've worked with big brands before that buy most of their product out of the country, and then they bring us in as a, like, "Look what we're doing." And the
You
goal
coined it as the dog and pony show when I saw you at Expo West, which I
That's
think
pretty
you
much
said
it.
it's happened to the tune of what, 12 times?
Yep,
Which
yep.
is, that's a lot.
You can Google my name, and I'm usually attached to some brand we don't sell to anymore,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
infuriating, but it's also, like, that's how this industry works. So
Mhm.
I think us smaller producers, when that happens, we need to have a more robust contract. We need to have a more robust forward-thinking plan. And when
Yeah.
you're young and you're hungry and you're growing a brand and you're like, someone's gonna buy 19,000 pounds of our trim
Yeah.
every month. Yes! Like,
You're
I
just trying
don't
to lock down
care.
that PO.
I'll
Right. Just
figure
trying
it
to get the
out.
PO.
Like, let
Right.
me do the dog and pony show.
Yeah.
But in the long run, it's not good for us. Like, we need
Mhm.
to stand up to these brands and stand up and be like, okay, yes, you can
Mhm.
use my face because you are doing the right thing buying from us.
Mhm.
But that ends when you stop buying, or that
Yeah.
ends on this date. And let's talk about the goal of introducing more domestic product into your supply chain. And
Mhm.
if that's not the avenue you want to go down, just be upfront.
Mhm.
Just be upfront that like you're going to pay us a ridiculous amount for this product for this period of time, and you're going to use me as marketing, and then it ends.
Yeah.
It's not just this ongoing, like, forever marketing campaign
Mhm.
that's fake news,
Yeah.
basically. So, that's a tough situation that I get caught into a lot,
Mhm.
but the intention is there. Like, we've worked with really large brands that wanna buy from us. They throw me on their podcast, and they buy
Right.
3,000 pounds of liver, and then they never talk to us again.
Yeah.
Like, get that I get that they wanna do the right thing. But we
Mhm.
live in a land now where it's shareholders and doing the right thing. Shareholders usually win.
Yeah.
And it's infuriating for us that are doing the right thing, which is why a lot of us go to the direct to consumer route because we're like, screw these big accounts. They don't have our best intention. I will say though, like our current partners and our current customers are actually being really wonderful.
Mhm.
But it's not those giant accounts that we used to work with in the past. As
Yeah.
far as imports go, these big brands have the power to buy from us and blend
Yeah.
us in and help us grow. But
Mhm.
there's just a lot of fear in the marketplace, I think.
Mhm.
And I don't have a solution for that, but I'll tell you what my fear is. My fear is right now animals in the US are worth more than they've ever been.
Right.
And nobody's growing their herds. A lot of old timers are cashing out, or they're
Yeah.
just not keeping replacements. And I worry that the market's gonna get so high that it's gonna crash.
Mhm.
And then these big feedlot companies are gonna scoop everybody up. And then everybody's gonna be owned by the same company. And if all you buy is Costco beef, all you end up with is Costco beef.
Yeah.
And so that's my fear.
Right.
I hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
The cattle market usually has these 10-year cycles, and right now it's so high that
Mhm.
everyone is excited and worried at the exact same time, and it's just
Yeah.
like it's a weird place to be, and it's a weird to own property and have animals and then own a meat company, and
Mhm.
it like, one side is doing great, and the other side is, like, barely hanging on because it's like, how do we compete in this market?
Mhm.
Um So anyway, I don't have a solution, but, like, those are the things that I think about all the time is, like, these big brands have the opportunity to buy from us. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
teeny tiny amount of the 800,000 pounds they buy every month, but it
Yeah.
helps us so much. It helps the
Mhm.
whole industry of regenerative so much. Um, but yeah, it's a conundrum that we're all thinking about all the time, and I'm constantly getting these reports, and I'm like, "Oh my god, is it gonna crash? Is it gonna stay high?" Like, it's
Yeah.
it's bananas right now.
Yeah. I really appreciate you sharing all that, and I appreciate like the ask isn't even, "Hey, buy all of your product from us." It's like, buy trim that you mix in with other trim so that it's not
Yeah.
even as much of a, margin compression. But I get the brand side of it too. Like if you can get away with it and you can just bank that margin and you can tell your boss or, the CFO is going to see that it's 2%, 4%, whatever percent higher. It's like
Mhm.
it's tough to say no to that, especially when you know, other than being domestic, it seems like a lot of that supply has the same attributes or claims or certifications at this point.
Mhm.
So
But
yeah,
does it?
right.
But
So
does it?
that's
Yeah.
that's the other challenging thing. I mean, a no-brainer thing that is like a total duh to me is the country of origin labeling, which I
Yeah.
feel like most of the people that listen to the show know that that's kind of asinine at this point and just needs to be an easy switch to like, look, if it's imported, it needs to say it's imported. I don't care if
Mhm.
it's processed here, like it's not product of the USA. I think that could be helpful.
Mhm.
But you know, I have an idea that is super half baked and not based on the level of expertise that you have for sure. But is there an opportunity for some sort of a middleman broker, aggregator, or like cooperative of processors to get involved here? Because it seems like the challenge there would be doing that extra work and then paying that third party like with margin that probably doesn't exist potentially.
Mhm.
But it does feel like that person could maybe aggregate supply to make some of the math work a little bit better for some of those bigger off takers. Am I totally off base there? I mean,
There are a few companies doing that,
yeah,
and we've worked with them and not worked with them. It's tough because the logistics for the little
right,
guys, for us, they're just wonky. Like, I have my place in Oregon House, like, friends up in Tomales Bay, like, our state is giant. And so,
right.
like, to aggregate all these animals, and that's what I do for our business, I
Hmm.
aggregate for our producer group. You'd have to kind of work with an aggregator of aggregators to, like, get
Right.
that supply chain. But a lot of people do that. A lot of people do this, like, brokering deal where they never even touch the product, but they're like, "I can get it over here, I can get it over there, and I can ship it to
Hmm.
you." But the main issue is, like, how do we grow an understanding of regenerative? And, like, I feel like Will and Jenny have done a really good job. You've done a really good job. Like, there
Hmm.
are these leaders in the industry of marketing what we do that
Right.
we need to lean on a little bit more and not worry so much about, like, "I'm promoting White Oak." Like, White Oak's amazing. I wanna promote them all day. And the
Right.
more people buy from them, the more they're interested in what I'm doing. So, marketing is a big one. Investment. I know it's
Right.
like it's tricky. Like, investment in ag is tricky, especially in ag that isn't like the way you learn it in school. Add glyphosate, add
Yeah.
nutrients, sell lots of bigger, stronger, faster products with no nutrients. It's like
Yeah.
that's the program, and
Hmm.
people get nervous about, you know, trying to invest in something new. But,
Hmm.
like, our nation's really unhealthy, and, like,
Right.
single ingredient food is what's gonna help a lot of us get healthy.
Hmm.
I actually have been on, like, a crazy health journey since the pandemic.
Mm.
We I told this story in a different podcast, but we did that amazing schools program. So in
Hmm.
2021, we had, like, this big event at the ranch, and we were talking about the schools program, and there was this big article, and I was, like, in the photo with everybody, and I was like, "Yay!" And I looked at the photo, and I was like, "That's me?" Like, I hadn't been practicing what I preach, right?
Yeah.
Like, single
Yeah.
source ingredients, eat healthy, eat a lot of protein, work
Hmm.
out. And so I was like, "Oh my god." Like, I'm
Yeah.
sitting here telling everybody to eat healthy and, like, regenerative is better, and I'm letting my health go. And
Yeah.
so it's been, like, a game changer since then to really like, when I go to the store, if I find regenerative product, I just buy it.
Hmm.
And that's just who I am, and that's just what I'm doing and what I've chosen to do.
Yeah.
But I am a lot healthier than I was, like, 5 years
Yeah.
ago, and I'm
Yeah.
paying attention to what I eat. People get overwhelmed. People just get
Hmm.
overwhelmed with all the choices, and nutrient density is such a big deal, but it's hard, like, how do you market that? How do you market,
Hmm.
like, healthy everyone thinks healthier, it's not gonna taste good. It always
Hmm.
tastes better, like, nutrient dense food tastes so much better. This is such
Hmm.
a rant.
No, I mean, it's all stuff that I think's top of mind. And especially with the work that we're doing with the coalition and the trade association, which is like we're trying to find some sort of
Mhm.
efficient, unified, harmonized, coherent narrative, bullet points, marketing tactics that,
Mhm.
you know, we can talk about as a large group. And it's not an easy thing to solve for. And
No.
it's not even the easiest thing to solve for just by commodity. And, you know, if anyone's done a good job, I feel like it is the grass fed, grass finished beef folks and kind of figuring out what has resonance there.
Mhm.
My questions around that success are like how much of that is attributed to carnivore and paleo influencers, which sometimes do bend the line between, I think, I don't want to say stretching the truth, but using some advantageous kind of marketing or bullet points. But like the stuff has real positive effect. And I think overall, like it has been good getting some of that truth back into the world for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I see you at Expo West in March, and a couple weeks before, I'm on Instagram, and there's Carnivore MD Paul Saladino holding a brick
I
of
know.
ground beef from y'all at Sprouts, and I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
god, this is amazing! Like, I can't
I
wait to
know.
talk to Carrie about that.
Yeah.
And you know what what exactly did that do for y'all? We probably don't know, but I'm sure it had some sort of net positive effect on especially your Sprouts business.
Yes, but it's I feel like it helped with the Sprouts program overall because
Yeah,
we are, again, one little brand in their giant repertoire of brands, and he picked our product up, and he has, like, millions of followers, and he
yeah,
showed our logo, and he was like, "Get it at Sprouts," and it was, like,
yeah,
such an amazing moment that we're like, "Oh my god, somebody noticed us."
yeah.
So that I believe was a big game changer for just kind of solidifying
Hmm.
our spot in Sprouts. Because when you get into a grocery chain, a lot of the time, they're like, "You need to come do demos, you need shelf
Right.
talkers, you need to pay for this placement," and Sprouts has a different way of working with people, and it's been a really good relationship, and and him picking up our product and showing it to the world was,
Yeah.
like, I think really helped with solidifying our place in that grocery store.
Yeah. Y'all have some cuts in the meat case at Sprouts too, on top
Mhm.
of some of the CPG products or no?
They're all CPG, and they're in the frozen grab and go, like, in the center
Okay.
of the store.
Okay.
It's New York ribeye and top sirloin, and then
Okay.
our ground beef packs. Hopefully, we can get our, country blend in there, which is the liver and heart blend as
Yeah.
well, but those are the 4 that we are carrying right now, and we just expanded
Nice.
into, Arizona.
So California, Arizona, Nevada, that is
Those are
that
the
those
3 right
3?
now.
Okay.
Yeah. It's nice because they also don't go, "We want you on the whole West Coast," and we're like,
Right.
"Ah." A good problem, but sometimes it's nice to grow, like, 1 state at a time, and we can actually,
Yeah.
like, handle the processing.
Yeah, I mean, those are 3 of the most important states for Sprouts, so I think it's great, if it's working for y'all, so that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Usually, Carrie, we talked about this a little earlier in the show, but one question I did have just on the agronomic side is what is unique about y'all's context that maybe you'd like to talk about or people should understand about how it affects the way y'all might raise the animals in, and you said Oregon House, like the state is the name, Oregon House, California.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's in California. It's
Yeah.
called Oregon House, California. It's teeny tiny. Um, so our property is not irrigated. So
Mm,
we run our animals here from December to June, and then they go
okay.
up north to an irrigated pasture in Modoc County.
Okay.
So something unique that our business does is we try to utilize all the grass at prime time in all of California.
Mhm.
As we know, California is a huge state.
Yeah.
So, up north, the grass is prime time starting in about June, ending in about, November, and then we have a lease with, White Buffalo Land Trust down in
Yeah.
Southern California.
Yeah.
Their grass comes on a little bit earlier than ours here at the ranch. So we're really trying to utilize the prime grazing and finishing time in California all over the state so that we have a consistent product, and then in the times where grass isn't growing, we're supplementing with a little bit of hay. either to keep the animals fat or to continue to grow them so that when they hit the primetime grass, they finish right on that grass. So I really my job is the supply chain of the beef of Richards Regenerative. So
Yeah.
we buy from our cousin's property, my business partner, Spencer Smith, as well as we have the lease in Southern California. So we're really trying to utilize all the grass when it's like the perfect finishing grass.
Yeah. And you're harvesting and processing the entire year round. So you're also managing kind of
Yeah.
animal life cycle and weight to balance that as best you can too.
Yeah, so our cousin grows his own hay, so he's able to get those animals fat at the end of the year and then keep them fat on
Yeah.
his homegrown hay, which has been a game changer for us because the December well, like the January to May, April, May time in California is hard because the grass is beautiful and bright green, but it's super short and it's not quite ready for finishing.
Yeah.
So it needs to be more carbaceous. So he's able to supplement with hay, as well as up here, we'll get hay brought to our ranch, and in those
Yeah.
time frames, if we need to send animals, we'll supplement.
Yeah. Sounds like similar to what Lauren at Simple Creek kind of articulated as how they're rotating animals and trying to maximize like forage quality and density.
Yeah.
I it raises like an interesting conversation on another touch point that you and I have had is like we we are all trying to flip a cultural narrative of this beef being better than what is the air quote current gold standard, which is a unhealthy animal that's marbled with grain very quickly and has less nutritional, benefit for you.
Yeah.
But the entire, especially American consumer is trained that that's actually better when it's not. Um, so I just wonder, like, how do you think about, how you all are trying to create value? You mentioned the audacious piece and you think there's a big unlock with nutrient density data, but talk to me more about how you think about that as kind of a marketer in building this.
Yeah, so we did a study with Audacious last year, and the Nutrient Density Alliance, and they
Hmm.
basically took forage samples, and then they took our beef samples down at White Buffalo, actually.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that was the first time we saw that our beef at the omega-3 to 6 ratio was so much more narrow, in favor of the 3s
Hmm.
than commodity beef, and it was, like, off the charts, and we were like, "Oh, is this an anomaly? Like, is this just a random thing?" And as we talked more with Audacious, they're like, "No, this is what we've consistently seen
Yeah.
because the animal you're harvesting is more metabolically healthy, and the animal in the feedlot is basically metabolically unhealthy, hence
Mm.
the range of 6s to 3s." And so it's hard because you have, you know, where's the beef telling you that that big, huge marbled steak
Yeah.
is the gold standard.
Right.
Um, but that's a really, really young animal that is obese. And so I don't know how to market against that because the machine is so big,
Yeah.
but I can tell you that I feel great when I eat our product, and when I eat
Right.
one of those steaks, I feel like hell. So, that is the, measurement, what a N of 1. So, that is my measurement, but, like, it's tough. It's tough to go against the grain in any industry, and this one is
Mhm.
no different. But
Yeah, and I
audacious,
think
there's some shining light there with that data.
yeah. Yeah, and I mean, we're super bullish on what they're doing, and I think it's gonna be a huge unlock. I think it's still relatively unclear to me exactly how it becomes super effective marketing material from the
Mhm.
data. I think they're making great progress there, and Eric articulated some things really well, and we have some good examples of that. But in beef specifically, it's even a different conversation based on whether you're talking about trim or cuts,
True.
and depending on the sales channel you're talking about, right? Because I'm at the grocery store. I'm looking to buy a brick pack of beef. There's not going to be that much differentiation between the most regenerative and the most conventional, other than maybe
Mhm.
color, right?
Mhm.
Which, that's probably a good
Yeah.
indicator, but how much can you really differentiate that? I don't know. Whereas the cuts, the color's probably going to look significantly different. The marbling is going to be a lot whiter versus like more yellow.
Mhm.
Meat's probably going to appear a little bit leaner. So it's even interesting to think about that level of nuance of, are you going to have to tell a different story? Or are you going to have to use different materials based on the actual SKU when we're talking
Mhm.
about beef? And, to me, it's like, it seems like a lot of the folks that are more focused on D2C, it's kind of a captive audience. You're not getting that visual comparison in the store. So you're not doing that battle. It's more, hey, I'm trying to get you to buy something more than just a ribeye and a fillet every single time. And then I need to kind of tell you maybe how to prepare it that's different than you're used to, or
Mhm.
sell you some accompanying product that makes it easier to eat, more diversity of my offering so that I can manage, carcass utilization and margin. Um, so I don't know. I empathize with the business challenge of trying to think through all that and say, golly, where do you even start?
Yeah, at least on, like, Instagram, you have, like, 30 seconds. In the store,
Right.
you have, like, 10.
Yeah.
'Cause someone's basically looking at the label, they're looking for the things they wanna see, like, is it organic, is
Hmm.
it grass-fed, or they're looking at price. They're looking at, like, 5 different things that they care about, and then they pick it up, throw it in the basket.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we put regenerative in our name. We were like,
Yeah.
"At least we can throw this word in there, and they can flip it over, they can look it up, they can do whatever they want, but at least if they've heard the word before, they'll look at it and give it a second look, and
Hmm.
they'll go, 'Huh, I heard that word on that podcast that one time.'"
Yeah.
And we did a very, very different label this time. It is way softer, it is way
Yeah.
more,
The
like,
colors.
organic.
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't want
Hmm.
it to be the green and brown label that everyone has, which we totally
Yeah.
had before, to be fair.
Yeah. Hmm.
We try to differentiate ourselves in the case as much as we could so people
Yeah.
can look at it and, like, make a decision. It's tough.
Yeah. 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 And there's like a lot of ways to win, but most of them are unknown until you try. So that's the challenge,
Right.
right? It's like, it's interesting.
Mhm.
Um, You mentioned earlier the Harvest Path software system that you have
Mhm.
developed, and I've talked to your brother Tom about it before,
Mhm.
and super cool. Uh, just like, can you take us through the origin of that? Why that's important? What it does? Yeah, why you all wanted to like build it out and actually go commercialize it elsewhere? Like, talk to us about Harvest Path.
Yeah, so it like I said earlier, it started with arguing over how many cows we had, and so my brother, he worked at Salesforce for 25 years, and he's
Yeah,
done a lot of industry transitions of, like, getting an entire industry to put their information into a database to be more efficient. So he was
yeah,
like, "This is right up my alley." So, the product grew as we grew. So, at first, it was just
mm,
animals in, and then tracing, like, "Okay, this baby goes with this mom, and then we're gonna sell these animals, and this is how much money we made." And then it
yeah,
turned into, "Okay, we're gonna cut the animal up. Okay, now we're gonna sell this animal to this family." And so then we had to add products. Then we had
yep,
to add inventory. And then as we got bigger, yields became, like, the big deal, and we're like, "Oh, no, we have to do
ah,
lots of animals." So, like, we
right,
attach lots of animals to this harvest. This harvest goes to YVB. They give us a sheet back. We enter in all
hmm,
that data. So it evolved as our business evolved, and then
yeah,
as we got to there, which was basically when we decided to shrink the business and go full distributor model,
hmm,
we had the bandwidth to go, "Okay, can we turn this into a product for other people?"
hmm, hmm.
And so we launched it last year. It's called the Harvest Path AI, but it's agricultural intelligence.
There
We
you
will
go.
be using AI for in the future, but, that is what the AI stands for, so don't be scared.
Yeah.
But basically, you can track your animals through the app called, Animal Path. And then it
Mhm.
transitions to the processing called Processing Path, Production Path, sorry, and then there's Protein Path, and that's sales. And so
Mm.
within the program, there's 3 apps. The reason why we developed that way, because that's how the industry works. You have the animals, you have the processing, you have the sales. And a lot of people own 3 different companies or 2 different companies, and we needed a way to snap the chalk line. So, like, when the ranch sells to the meat company and the meat company sells to a customer. And so, we integrated with, QuickBooks, and we developed it. It's fully secure. We have, like, a few customers right now that are our beta customers, but we're selling
Nice.
it online, and it's been a huge learning experience running a software company after running a meat
Yeah.
company, after running a ranch, and after running
Yeah.
a photography company and all the other companies that
Yeah.
we thought were just super simple to run. But,
Yeah.
it's to empower the small to mid-sized rancher, and honestly, it's robust enough to handle a 500 head a day production plant. Like, that's the idea, is to give some traceability back to the small guy, but also be able to offer it to the bigger production houses as well.
Yeah. We'll definitely put the link in the show notes. Clarifying question of the three apps or paths. It's
Mhm,
designed to where if you're a customer, you could use one, you could use
mhm.
two, or you could use three, basically depending on your needs and the amount of operating companies or complexity in your supply chain. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, if you wanna just do
Nice.
it to run your animals on your ranch, you can do that. If you run
Yeah.
animals on your ranch, but you sell to families, you can use, 2 of the paths to make sure you can track all your sales, and if you
Yeah.
wanna do the whole gamut, you can run all 3.
Yeah. And it's built on top of Salesforce. So you basically
Mhm.
would be a Salesforce customer, and this is like a specialized version or some
You'd
sort of
be a
access that's
customer
replicated.
of ours, of Harvest Path, but
Okay.
it's
Okay.
built on their platform. So that's why it
Okay.
comes with all the security and all of the robustness of their giant system, and
Yeah.
that's why it could grow. Like, if you were
Yeah.
a larger company, it can handle that data. It's not gonna
Yeah.
crash on you.
Nice.
Yeah.
Um, Dumb non-rancher question. Uh, for the actual like on-farm animal tracking, are we branding cattle? Are we using ear tags? Are we using chips? Like, I'm just
Yeah.
super like, what's the mechanism for tracking the actual animals on the farm?
Yeah, so we use brands and we use ear tags. We don't use
Okay.
EID yet, but we have the system set up for that. So if you are an EID user, then you
An
can, and that
EID is like a digital enhanced ear
yeah,
tag,
the
right?
electronic, and it comes with a
Okay.
little wand, and basically,
Okay.
like, either the cattle run through the chute and it reads it, or you have a
Mm,
wand, and then you can program stuff like their weight, their current weight, what shots they've gotten.
mhm.
We do it all manually, but what we did in the system is we did it so you can upload animals really quickly. So you do a starting tag, an ending tag, you put
Yeah.
in all the vaccinations and everything, and you just add all those animals really quickly. And if there's one-offs, like, oh, this one had to get treated for this, or this
Mm,
animal's spotted and the rest of them are black, you can just edit those animals, opposed to like entering one animal at a time, which nobody wants to do
yeah.
or has
The
time to do.
the the third path, like basically, which is the commercial path, which is you're managing inventory and sales, that seems straightforward to me. The
Yeah.
second path, I think, is the one I have additional questions on, other than
It's
the
the
on
most
farm
complex,
part.
for sure.
Is that, Carrie, like an actually big ask of the processor from like a data management input perspective, or excuse me, is all of that mostly kind of already happening now, and the data is just not being captured? Like, I'm just trying to understand
Yeah.
is this a real burden on the processor? Is it actually like a great tool? Talk me through maybe implementation on that path.
So the way that it's built now is it's specifically for an operation like ours, where we own
Hmm.
animals, we send them to a production, step, and then we sell.
Yep.
We don't
Yep.
own we don't own a slaughterhouse.
Right.
So it's very robust for companies like ours. As far as it's built to be able to handle a slaughterhouse production, but the barcode scanning and stuff is like phase 2, and so that
Yep.
will come eventually. But right
Hmm.
now, it kinda sits in the front end and in the back end, and then whatever information comes out of the processing plant, like with YVB, we take their spreadsheets and we just upload them.
Got it.
Instead of like before, it was like entering each carcass weight
Yeah.
one at a
Yeah.
time. Now it
Yeah.
just uploads it, it creates inventory, you can sell it, you can then do a further fabrication, which is what we call processing. So taking
Hmm.
box beef and turning it into steaks. We can
Yep.
track all of that, all the yields, all the costs, what warehouse it's in, the transportation. So it's built very robustly for a business like ours who doesn't own a slaughterhouse. But we are
Yep.
building it so that slaughterhouses and production houses can use it.
Yeah. So right now it's more that it integrates with a processor versus the processor is the ideal customer. Right now, the
Mhm.
ideal customer is kind of a rancher that's also potentially an operator of some sort of commercial side meat business on
Or an
top of that.
owner of a meat company that doesn't even own animals, and they're just
Yep.
buying them, and they're throwing a label on it, and they're managing the production and yield and sales.
Okay.
It's really robust for those types of
Yep.
companies, but the idea is to be able to handle the whole system.
Cool.
I have a question for you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, you've been doing this a while. It sounds like you were, evangelized on regenerative in, like, 2019 or 2020?
Yes.
Where
During
did
COVID.
you see the regenerative movement going? And what are the bright spots? What bright spots? Because I know all the dark spots.
Yeah. It's a good question. I appreciate you asking and flipping the script on me. I would say like I want to have a upfront disclaimer of I feel very in the midst of some of those sticky challenges right now. So
Mhm,
my lens is maybe a little tainted at the moment. I still remain super hopeful and optimistic over the long term because like ultimately the truth is on our side. Like Joe at
mhm,
Serenity Kids said this in his podcast interview, and it's just like this is the right thing that has the most co-benefit for everyone involved. Period.
right,
So, you know, that's not going to change, and it's basically on us dumb humans to like figure out the systems that bring that to life in a way that
mhm,
um is better than the current system. But I just think like everything's cyclical and it feels like we're in a really big transformative period of transition just in general in the world in just about every facet.
for sure.
And I think when that happens, like the things that are being put to rest or dying fight really, really hard to stay alive. And
Yeah,
it feels like we're in that last fight or in one of the last fights. And it's going to just be kind of a slog. Um, and I think my earlier comments around how there is some really intense positive things going on mixed with some really intense negative things going on is like a great indicator of the fact that we are in one of those moments.
mhm,
Because, you know, I'm not a historian by any means, but my diagnosis would be that's probably pretty aligned with some similar stuff that we know has happened or think has happened based on the information that we have. Um, but ultimately, you know, what does all that mean? I don't know. But what brings me back to the work is ultimately the truth is on our side. This is the right solution, and we have to make it work from a human health, mom buying food for herself and her kids. That is that's got to be the focus, and I think that is lost in a lot of the farmer transition conversation sometimes, which helping the farmer transition, helping them have the education, helping them have a network, helping them have people in the area that they can talk to, helping them have the money to transition. Yeah, it's all super important, but ultimately it has to be married to some market mechanism that rewards them still for the widget that they are outputting, that they are growing, whether
sure,
that's beef, coffee, bananas, wheat, whatever.
mhm,
Um, and so that's a super self-serving comment because like that's the piece that we are working on, that I am working on, and
mhm.
I have identified that gap. It's not a silver bullet; it's a piece of an entire system that needs to continue to be built and worked on. So yeah, my turn to ramble. Don't know if that was coherent whatsoever, but that would be my top thoughts, I guess, at the moment.
No, I understand the rambling, and I also understand the challenges. It's a it's
Yeah.
a, um, it's a tough time,
Mhm.
and I feel like we need to, as a society, as a community, as whatever groups you are, we need to decide what's more important, um, the health of your body and your family and the community or the health
Mhm.
of your bank account, and it's like those need to kinda even out instead of picking one to be more important than the other.
Yeah. How can we reframe that trade-off or eliminate it altogether, which is also
Right.
a challenge.
Yeah.
Um, and, you know, I think, uh, as people that are trying to be leaders or be of service in the space, the biggest challenge that I personally have is just many times you feel like the world isn't ready for what you're trying to, help the world be ready for.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
just maintaining a level of resiliency and faith through that is probably the biggest challenge, I think, overall, which there's not like some easy button answer to do that. And it's different for everybody. Some people need a monthly Zoom call with a group of people in the industry. Some people need therapy. Some people just need a supportive spouse. Some people need, monetary resources to just continue to fund things that maybe aren't super commercializable short term. And so, I would love to see us all do something to support each other there more, but I don't have great coherence as to what maybe that could be that's effective and efficient.
Yeah, I always make a joke that we showed up to the regenerative party all excited and nobody was there. We're like, "We're
Yeah.
here. What's up, guys?" And we're like, "Hello?
Yeah.
No one's
Yeah.
here yet?" And then,
Mhm.
like, waves of people come in and you're like, "Welcome." And then they kinda
Mhm.
go away. And then they come in. Like, it's it's kind of like an ever-flowing, ongoing party that, like, when
Mhm.
people arrive, we embrace them, and then they flow out, and then new people come in. Um, Man, it's been a roller coaster, but, I'm here for it because the health of our community and family is the most important.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Feels like a good spot to end. So I don't know if we need the last question, but I'll tee you up for it if you have anything to add.
Okay.
How do we get ReGen Brands to have 50% market share by 2050?
Ooh, 50%.
Yeah.
That's
It's a
25
big
years.
number.
25 years. More conversations like this. Like what you're doing is podcasts are a big deal, and these conversations are a big deal. Um, Understanding that what we're doing, the data that we're tracking in our system, the data that
Mhm.
Audacious is tracking, like you said, it's the truth. And hopefully, investments and banking and all the people that have all the money will
Mhm.
see that this is actually a better option and invest in these system changes because it's a big lift.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, we are set up for a feedlot system. We are
Yeah.
not set up for a regenerative system. So ideally, the truth that comes out in the data that we're all tracking will pivot that money towards a better system.
Yeah. Amen. I love it. Carrie, this has been awesome. Thanks for the time. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah. We
This has
will,
been
thank you. We will share a bunch of links in the show notes for everybody. But as we always do, I will share the Richards Regenerative website before we exit, which is just richardsregenerative.com. So everybody check out the brand, check out Carrie. She's awesome, as you can tell from this conversation. And just Carrie, thanks for your work and thanks for being here today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. This has been awesome.
Yeah, anytime. For transcripts, show notes, and more information on this episode, check out our website, ReGen-Brands.com. That is ReGen-Brands.com. You can also check out our YouTube channel, ReGen Brands, for all of our episodes with both video and audio. The best way to support our work is to give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe to future episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. You can also subscribe to our newsletter, the ReGen Brands Weekly, and follow our ReGen Brands LinkedIn page to stay in the know on all the latest news, insights, and perspectives from the world of regenerative CPG. Thanks so much for tuning into the ReGen Brands Podcast. We hope you learned something new in this episode, and it empowers you to use your voice, your time, your talent, and your dollars to help us build a better and more regenerative food system. Love you guys.